Hey everyone, Matt Thomas here. Thank you for watching. So this video is very math specific, but I would highly suggest, even if you're not a math teacher, I would highly suggest you watch this because it will really explain the issues, I guess, with how math is taught in the US and not the issues with our math teachers. Our math teachers are amazing. Our math teachers are working through a system, working with a system that doesn't set them up for the best success. And I'll explain that as this video goes on. And I will tell you, this video has taken more research than most of my other videos I've done. It's taken me a while to put this video out, mainly because of the research, the constant findings that I found and so on. And for me, I've been trying to really understand all of this. And not being a mathematician, it has been really challenging for me. So I've been holding off releasing this video until I really could understand conceptually all of the information that I found. And I still, to a point, can't really understand it all conceptually because, again, I'm not a mathematician. So I figured I would just put this out there for the experts, right? The math teachers, our mathematicians here, and allow them, let them see it, right? Let them kind of decipher it and take the information and let them, go through it and see what they think and see how they feel about it. So let me begin by saying I have high respect for math teachers. I really do. You've seen my previous math videos. You know how much respect I have for math teachers. My wife was a math teacher for years. I could see, somewhat firsthand, right? Like how stressed she was, how she was she was lesson planning every day, trying to create relevant and fun lessons. And of course balancing the testing and all the pressure with that, and it was very challenging for her. So I have such high respect for our math teachers, and I firmly believe that, especially based on the information I'm going to show you, that our system of education is not setting them up for the best success that it could. And as hard as they work and as great as they are, the education system, whatever it is kind of limiting the success that they can have. And as I've shown before, I've got 50 years of math scores to show to support that the scores won't necessarily go up too much or go down that much, right? There's just like an even level for the past 50 years of math scores. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling on a little bit, and I will do a little setup before I get to the information. What my intention was of this video was this. So I intended to research the top strategies of teaching math, right? So that was my goal. Like I've done in the past, you've seen my other videos, like here's the top teaching strategies that I found, all based on neuroscience and psychology. I didn't want to tell everyone things that they already know, right? I didn't want to say, hey, here's the top 10 teaching strategies from teachers. Because as you know, I've been very clear with my other videos. I do feel at times that our education system, what's asked of our students, what education asks of our students to do, their brain isn't always ready for that yet. So what educators ask our students to do, the students' brains, it doesn't always align, right? Neuroscience and education doesn't always line up. And so I didn't want to research, top 10 teaching strategies from the perspective of educators, because sometimes the information we get and we give is not accurate based on, the brain, how the brain learns and how the brain develops. So just like my other videos where I've shown teaching strategies based on neuroscience, I wanted to show math teaching strategies based on neuroscience, right? Because then I have some support. So if not, people will be like, okay, Matt, this is good, but how do you know this works? I don't know, an educator told me with no background in neuroscience or how the brain develops. And if that response doesn't really have a lot of validity, right? But if someone goes, hey, Matt, this is a cool strategy. Where's your support for this? Oh, okay, according to neuroscience, this is how the brain, blah, blah, blah. And so it has a little more strength, I guess, behind it. So that's what I wanted to show. What I found was not what I expected. Because what I found was, I was researching top math strategies based on neuroscience, and I'll be honest, I didn't really find any. At least based on the way we teach math in the United States. The strategies that I found were for an entirely different presentation of math, an entirely different way to teach math. Now, don't get me wrong, there are great strategies out there, just not for how we teach math in the US. And that's where I went, oh my gosh, and that's where this video kind of took a turn. right? Of how what I intended versus what the end result was. And so I came to this theory, this conclusion, I guess, that education in the U.S. needs to rethink how math is taught before we can implement all of the strategies in earnest, right? All of the expert, and when I say expert, I'll explain what experts I'm talking about. Experts in math, what they suggest that we teach, the way they suggest we teach, we can't really teach it that way unless we have a whole educational change. Now, again, I want to make sure that I'm very clear. The math teachers we have are awesome. Math teachers in the U.S. are working as hard as they can and doing as best as they can in a system that I think does limit the amount of success that they're able to have with students. It's not the math teachers at all. They're doing what they can, right? They're doing what the textbooks tell them. They're doing what our institution has created for them, right? Educational institution. I just don't feel that it's setting them up for the best success, and I'll explain as this goes on. So let me go on. Let me give my disclaimer. I'm not a math teacher. You know that. The strategies I'm going to share with you have been difficult for me to conceptualize. So my apologies, right? There's going to be times I'm going to explain, but again, you're the mathematicians. You guys are the experts. I'm not. So, as I mentioned, I have high respects for math teachers, more than I think you know, even though I think I'm telling you enough I do. I have such high respects for math teachers. My wife was a math teacher, as I mentioned. With any of this video, of course, take what you like, discard what you don't. And again, I'll just reiterate one more time, I'm not a mathematician, so some of the concepts are a little unclear to me as far as how to implement them. But you, as mathematicians, as the experts watching them, will have, I'm sure, a much easier time implementing them than I would, right? So let's start with the background before we get into the strategies. So we rank in the world, there's our rankings for the past, 9 years, 10 years in the world with math. In 2012, we were 27th. In 2015, we were 38th in the world. And in 2018, we were 30th in the world. Now, let me first preface that entire thing by saying, I'm not a big rankings guy. I'm not a big test guy. Like, to me, I look at the rankings and I go, to me, it's not a huge thing. And I just have always been that way. I have numerous studies that will support that test results do not necessarily equate to long-term success and happiness. And so tests to me are just kind of a part of the thing that we have to do, but I don't necessarily buy into it, especially in the fact that these test scores that these world rankings are based on are from 15-year-olds. So we're testing children, 15-year-olds, whose brains are not fully developed. So I do want to clarify that. And plus, it depends on the who's doing the results, right? So the results you're seeing are the ones generally that people you hear on the news, and you're like, hey, we ranked 30th in the world in math. Those are the ones that they tend to quote. These studies right here? You can click the links; they're right there. But if you look at U.S. News Report, we were first in the world last year in education overall. We're 6th in the world now this year in education overall. So it really depends on the methodologies and the criteria, that's being evaluated. So I don't say value these too much, but when I hear test scores, I go, long-term studies don't equate, success on test scores don't always equate to long-term studies or long-term success and happiness. So I've got studies to support that as well. You've seen them in my other videos I put there. So before I get to the strategies, because I know that's what you want to see, let me go into my conclusions first before showing the research, because I want you to see how I'm going to be viewing this, or how I once I read it all and started conceptualizing how I was kind of looking at it, right? So I feel, based on the research I'm about to show, that math teachers in the U.S. are not set up for teaching math in the way that experts say that math should be taught. And how I defined experts was mathematicians. So what I did was, if I researched educators, what do teachers feel is the best way to teach math? Honestly, what comes up is the same stuff you already know. Scaffolding. Okay, scaffolding is great. I've done the science behind scaffolding before. It's a great way to teach. How to scaffold in math, right? That's a whole different subject, right? If you Google top ways to teach math, you're going to get the same ones. Like I said, scaffolding. Sit a student who doesn't do well in math next to some student who does well in math, which is great in theory, but now you're relying on both of them to communicate. You're hoping that the student who does well in math doesn't mind taking time away from his or her studies to help the other person, right? So there's a lot of factors in that. And when I focused on experts, like, I'm an English person, right? For me to tell a math teacher what strategies work, math, right? Mathematicians, right? They are the experts. I'm not the expert in mathematicians. So what I did was I researched countless videos. I saw more TED Talk videos than I can care to admit. I read countless articles from mathematicians. That's really when I focus on experts who I'm talking about, people who study math and how they feel math should be taught. I looked at read many articles about how it's taught around the world with some of the most successful countries who are the most successful in math, and I'll show you that later on. So also I've got 50 years of data. You've seen it before. I've got the links in here as well that show that math scores in the U.S. will pretty much stay the same if there's not an institutional change in the way that we teach math. We in the U.S. have established this formula, this memorize the formula method as far as learning, which does not equate to long-term understanding of math. I'll show you that later on. The way that math should be taught, according to the experts, the mathematicians, who are both mathematicians first and then educators as well, they teach math as they are mathematicians, right? Does not correlate with how we assess math. So the way we assess math in school, right, here's the test, retest, test, does not line up with how math should be taught, according to the experts. Math has become a teach to the finish line instead of a lifelong learning method. So we focus on the end result as opposed to the journey. And for all this to really change, it does need to start from the beginning, like, elementary school. I think kindergarten, maybe first grade, they still have fun with math. I'll show you some of the strategies they're suggesting, but like second grade, right, when things really get serious, there needs to be an institutional change from the very beginning. So when I was doing the research, I was seeing the two different philosophies. And yes, I'll get to the strategy soon. I want to set this up first so you can see where I'm coming from. We have two different strategies as far as teaching math. In the U.S., we focus on the rote learning method. And so what rote learning is essentially just memorizing until you get it, versus the mathematician theory, mathematics theory. So in the U.S., it's rote learning. That's how we focus on teaching. And mathematicians have their own theory or their own way of learning math. In the U.S., we focus on testing, retesting, identify the need, retesting, etc. Mathematicians focus on relationships, fun, journey, struggle. They don't focus a lot on testing. And please do remember, as one thing we have to keep in mind with math, and again, I always go back to the 50 years of research, right? 50 years of data that shows that math scores will stay relatively the same no matter what, unless we make an entire institutional change. Please remember that math is one of the first subjects to be deleted from the brain, and I've got that link to that video that I did. So we're struggling with having our students retain math. And I want to start with this powerful quote that I got from an article, and I linked the article. You can click that article to read the article. Stanford math education professor Joe Baller spends a lot of time worrying about how math education in the United States traumatizes kids. That's such a powerful word, traumatizes. Got the link there so you can read the article if you'd like. So this is how the U.S. education system is set up for math. We, again, focus on rote learning. And if you're not watching the video, if you're just listening to it, do you mind maybe looking at this slide really quickly? I think this slide is a perfect example of math in the U.S., right? We focus, our philosophy is rote learning, which focuses on learning or memorizing by repetition. Just do it over again, work hard enough, and you'll get it. You'll remember it, right? And what happens is, if the sumo wrestler is math, and we're the little guy trying to force it back in. So the sumo wrestler's our brain, actually, deleting things. Like, I'm going to delete all this stuff by the end of the day because we don't think you need it. And we're trying to force it back in. Like, no, math, stay. And again, it's not just math. I've talked about this before. Math, grammar, things like that we need to, that our brain doesn't always like, okay, we don't need that for survival. I can't memorize everything. Let me just start deleting stuff. So that's really our brain trying to delete stuff, and we're pushing it back in. Like, come on, stay there. And I put this little stat down here because I thought it was very powerful, but I didn't know where else to put it. Teachers in the U.S. spend almost 1,100 hours a year teaching. That's more than almost every other country out there. We work very, very hard. Not always efficient at times, I think, right? But we work very hard. We teach a lot of hours. And again, there's the link. 50 years of research suggests that the math scores have not fluctuated, and they won't fluctuate, really, unless there's been an institutional change. Even though the standards and the test types have changed, right? And we put a lot of money into professional development. So, again, how I did the research, I took the top strategies. What I did was I took the top strategies, theories, and ideas from a multitude of mathematicians and math educators. And I took notes. I would watch TED Talk videos, so many TED Talk videos, and read multiple articles. And I've linked a lot of them in here. And I would hear from educators on how math should be taught. And so I wrote down their beliefs and their philosophies. And then I would check off when one was consistent. And I'm going to share with you the consistency. So here they are. And these are in no order. I have them numbered 1 through 6, but it's not like some are more important than the others. It's just to keep my train of thought. So one strategy or philosophy that always came up is math as a language. And it should be treated as a language. It should be taught as a language. And multiple videos went over that, talked about that. And one video, this gentleman was presenting how he taught his niece, how he taught his niece math. And so he said this. This was his example. I'll do my best to try to share it. The video is linked down below or in one of the other slides. He said, in the way we tend to teach like this. 1 plus 1 is 2. Memorize it. Just remember that. 1 plus 1 is 2. And he said he was teaching his niece math, 5-year-old niece. And he wrote this out. He wrote 1 apple plus 1 apple equals, and she goes, 2 apples. Awesome. 3 pencils plus 2 pencils equals 5 pencils. Awesome. 4 billion plus 1 billion, and he said that his sister had looked at him like, she's 5. She doesn't know billions yet. And the niece goes, 5 billion, because she was just lining the numbers and the language up. And he goes, 1/3 plus 1/3 is 2/3. And then he writes, 7x squared plus 2x squared is 9x squared. And so this 5-year-old is doing algebra because she's just lining up the words, right? So 5-year-old's doing algebra because of how he's teaching it to her. So math is a language. It should be taught that way. The next concept, and again, this is overwhelming. This was in I think it's fair to say all the videos I saw. Math should focus on relationships. So teaching fewer math concepts, but deeper relationships between all of them. And this gentleman had this great video where he showed a river delta and trees with multiple branches and blood vessels, and he was showing how they all look the same. He said, look, we're all geometry. And he's doing this whole video. Again, I'm not doing it justice. But he said math is about relationships. It needs to be focused about how they all intertwine with each other, as opposed to memorize this, and this. The next one. Mathematicians were very adamant. Students should be allowed to find it their own way. Students should be allowed to find the answer their own way, right? Explore and grapple with these math problems. Because they said we're so focused on the end result, but we shouldn't be. We should be focused on the journey. And students aren't experiencing that journey when it's just find the answer, find the answer, find the answer. And I was thinking like a real world example. If you're stuck in traffic, but you know like the back roads, you can find another path to get around traffic. That's okay, right? Like that's part of society, right? It's critical thinking is what it is. So some students may be able to find the answer their own way, and that's not wrong. Or it shouldn't be wrong, right? That's what many mathematicians said. They should be allowed to find it their own way because then they're not exploring. If we just give them the formula to memorize, they're not exploring, they're not grappling with it. They should be allowed to find the answer their own way. And I'll give a little neuroscience with that because I want to make sure I apply the neuroscience with this video. So when we make a mistake, right? When a mistake is made, when you're writing something out or you're doing a problem or something, whenever you make a mistake, even if you don't realize it, your brain grows. It grows with knowledge. It literally does grow. And it represents that your brain is struggling. It's very important for your brain to struggle. Because when your brain struggles, you get this synapses, this little pew in your brain. And even if you get something wrong, your brain's like, dude, you got that wrong. But even though you don't realize it, you're just writing something out, you get it wrong, your brain knows, boop, it's wrong. So when you discover that you made a mistake, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, a second synapse fires. And now you create a new neural pathway. So your brain is growing. So when students are exploring a math problem and they do it incorrectly, but then they realize how they did it wrong and how to fix it, boom, now a neural pathway is corrected. So there's an article here that's linked. I have both of these quotes here linked, these articles linked, so you can look at them. This article here I like because it references that oftentimes math teachers, they themselves are traumatized with how they teach math because they came up through the same system that tends to traumatize people coming up. And so that's a great article as well. So let's go through the last few. So mathematicians, again, for the most part, agreed that memorizing the specific formulas in math doesn't lead to an understanding of mathematical concepts. So just because you memorize the parts doesn't mean you understand the whole. So the rote learning strategy is not the most effective way to learn mathematics. And I've got a link there to data from 13 million students that showed that the lowest performing students were the ones who used the rote learning method. And I tried to connect this to English, right? Because I'm an English teacher. And I thought, and I went, you know what? In English, it's the same way, right? Memorizing grammar rules doesn't automatically allow for a better holistic understanding of what's being read, right? Being able to identify whether the infinitive acts as a noun or not is not going to understand characterization, inferences, motivation, things like that. So memorizing the little rules of how to find certain things does not always lead to a better understanding, or as they said, is not an effective way to learn the overall understanding concepts of math. So next, mathematicians agreed math should include imagination and games. The STEM movement, right, includes fun, exploration. And so I thought about this. I went, as a math teacher, you've seen my other videos, I'm sure, on having fun in the classroom and how, as teachers, even if you have to implement one day a month or one day every other week of dude, we're just going to have fun today, right? I mean, based in the concepts or context of your lesson, right, or of your subject, right? And so we're just gonna have fun. I'm gonna have fun, and we're gonna do some fun stuff, and the students are gonna love it. And no, you're not going to test the students on it, right? I've talked about that, the importance of that. In math, I'm like, dude, have a Legos day. If you're a math teacher, have a Legos day. Bring in a bunch of Legos and just have the students go at it. And no, you're not going to test them on the Legos thing. Just see where their imagination goes. And it goes a long way, too, with how the students view your class. I've talked about the amygdala in previous videos. And how students are stressed or not enjoying what they're doing, the amygdala will literally block out new information to the brain. So they're not really going to be learning no matter what. If they don't enjoy the class, not you, it's nothing on you, right? Like they could love you as a teacher, right? But if they're just not enjoying the class for some reason, if they're stressed for whatever reason, they won't learn. So take that stress away. And have one of those Lego days. Just have a Lego day. And in math, you can justify it. In English, it'd be hard to justify a Lego day, right? Yeah, we're doing Legos to represent the plot of a story. Like, yeah. But in math, you could totally justify it. And the way I use it in my class is there's times when in my English class, I teach financial literacy to my students. And yeah, I've got literacy in my standards, but it's not specific to financial literacy. I show them about retirements and how to invest in the stock market and different ways to save money in the future. And I can justify it, right? Because look, there's two things in life that everybody's going to go through. Financial stuff and health. Money and health, that's the two biggest things that we all need and go through. Yet, for some reason, we don't teach those things in school. The two biggest things, finance and health. And so I do that, right? And so because life is a long game test, right? You don't have to test your students doing Legos because it's like the long game, right? Like, hey, it's about life. It's about have fun, building structure, etc. So anyway, have a Legos day. Next one. Mathematics needs to include fun and exploration. And I said put see previous slide because these are like two separate things that would come up even though they are really the same. Have fun. Let the students explore math. The next strategy or the next thought on math. Math is patterns and patterns is art. And art is fun. And so you can see the pattern of fun. It should be fun, right? Math can be conceptualized in many, many, many different ways. And there's a great video, I've linked it in one of the slides later on, where this mathematician shows how to find 4/3, how to represent 4/3 in multiple different ways, including musically, including in the circles that draw a pattern, and you can see how the patterns form. And it's awesome. And so math of patterns, patterns is art, art is fun. Number 7, this was a common theme in the articles. Not so much the TED Talk videos that I saw, but in the multitude of articles that I read, a common theme was speed is the enemy. We should not be putting excessive emphasis on answering math questions quickly. Because understanding that math is the journey, right? Not always the end result. And that puts pressure on the amygdala. I've talked about that before. But it also takes away the freedom of exploration. And it's interesting, going back, I wasn't planning to say this in this video now, but I just thought of this from one of the videos that I watched, talking about how it's not always the end result, right? It's not just the answer we're trying to find. And someone could argue, well, with the test scores, the test we give, it is the right answer that we're trying to find. And there was an article about how 2 plus 2, it was like 2 plus 8 is always 10. Something like that. You'll see the video. I have it linked somewhere here. 2 plus 8 is always 10. I'm messing this whole thing up. Sorry. 2 plus 2 is 4. And he said, no. He goes, 2 plus 2 can be 10. And people are like, what are you talking about? And he shows this thing conceptually. And again, not being a mathematician, I don't really understand how it works. I just thought it was really cool. About rather than doing a linear line, he said, put it in a circle. And if you put it in a circle and you count the numbers, it equals 10. And it was like, whoa. So if you get the answer of 2 plus 2 is 4, or whatever, I don't know how I said it right, 2 plus 8 is, I don't know, whatever I said, 2 plus 2 is 4, then sure, but 2 plus 2 can also be 10 in this other mathematical conceptual way. Anyway, if we continue, and those right there, those are the main strategies. And I'll finish with just a couple more things here, and then I'll finish this video. So it made me think too, what other subjects focus on rote learning and not say real world application? I thought English, well, vocab tests, I get it. We have district midterm tests, SBAC, I get it. But honestly, with English, I'm focusing on creativity. And creativity doesn't mean, creative writing doesn't mean short stories. It can, right? But it doesn't always mean short stories, right? If your tire goes flat and you are trying to get the tire off and you can't find a way to do it or whatever, like you're trying to find creative ways to change that tire, creative ways to do stuff. Creativity doesn't always mean short stories. So we want our students to be creative and find creative ways to do things. So with English, it could be short story writing. We focus on that a lot. Analysis, research, right? We don't just have them memorize stuff and give them tests. We do real world applications with English. Characterization and so on. Science, they do labs. There was the science teacher years ago that would do rockets on the field, the football field, and create these rockets and show these students, and they would shoot rockets in the air, and the students would come to class like totally jazzed and excited about science because they got to shoot rockets in the air. PE, right? The PE coaches don't have the students memorize the rules to football. They have them play. They have them run. Even health class, when we did have it, did like the diet chart thing for a week, and it would focus on like real world stuff. And so math is really one of the few subjects where rote learning is really the only way it's taught. And so let's look at how math is taught in the other countries, because you could be like, great, math, that's wonderful, but how is it taught elsewhere? Like, what are we comparing it to? So again, knowing that the U.S. method of teaching math is rote learning, so memorization techniques based on repetition. I've got links. Wherever it says link, 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 those are articles. So in China teaches math with more of an interrelationship with math, right? Focusing on the relationships. But to be honest, they also have what I call the nose to the grindstone. They do math for 15 hours a week. Like, holy cow. Singapore, which I think last year was the #1 country in the world for math, they focus on fewer topics and greater depth. They have their own vision on how math should be taught. Finland has the slow down, start later, and teach less method. And honestly, they do that with all of their classes. They're always ranked high in education. They're always ranked high in country happiness, etc., etc. Slow down, start later, teach less. And they do focus a lot on neuroscience, like how it should be taught, how the brain learns. India focuses more on data sciences, And I have a link here, really good link. 7 of the top 10 emerging jobs are based on data sciences, and they gave some people in the field a poll. They asked all these people like when they use certain type of math, and there's a link there that'll show like algebra was like 2% of the people used algebra, geometry like 4% or something, data sciences it was like 80%. So there's a great link there to see. So that's how other countries do it. Now let's compare some philosophies before we end this video. So the rote learning philosophy of the United States has us ranking 30th in the world based on 2018. That was the last test. 30th in the world. Our U.S. International Mathematical Olympiad teacher, the one who coaches, the coach of our math team, totally changed how he coaches the team. And he teaches the philosophy, he teaches the exploration method. Essentially what I've been talking about. And I've got the link to the video if you want to see it. So, our country teaches math a certain way. We rank 30th. This coach comes in, teaches it with the exploration method. The past 6 years, he's been first in the world. Our team has been first in the world 3 times, second in the world twice, and third in the world once over the past 6 years. Now, our country's ranked 30th, yet we're placing in the top 3. The past 6 years, we've been in the top 3 in the World Math Olympiad ranking. First 3 times, because he teaches the exploration method, not the rote learning method. So again, my conclusion before we end this, math needs a marketing makeover, right? Math, and one of the other videos talks about that, and actually does a really cool video, a math video. Marketing makeover. When people think math, so math teachers right away, I feel bad because students right away who've never met the math teacher could be the coolest guy. We have some great math teachers on campus, like really cool people. Yet students go, oh, I got math first period. Ugh. They've never walked into the class, and automatically they have this negative thinking towards math. Math needs a makeover, right? As opposed to like, dude, math, oh yeah, fun. Oh, cool, math. We get to play, we get to explore, we get to do this, we get to build stuff, whatever. Most of the information for change really does apply to structural changes at the beginning, right? 2nd grade on up. Because I think in kindergarten they still explore, they still have fun. So when we get students in high school, right, they've already been through, 8 years of rote learning? So that's challenging, right? So it does need to change at the beginning, right? And the U.S. method is outdated. It's based on the 1800s model of algebra, geometry, calculus. So we haven't really evolved as a teaching, right? As an art of teaching mathematics. So how can we use this as teachers? I think this is my last slide. Yeah, other than the videos. How do we use this as teachers? I'll be honest. As an English teacher, I don't really know. I mean, being honest, right? Because I wanted to get this video out to the mathematicians, the ones who can take this and decide what to do with this information. And I think if you guys can sit during a PLC or a teacher collab and go, all right, this is what mathematicians are saying. You guys are the experts. How can we implement this stuff? Maybe implement a little bit at a time. Not worry too much about test scores. I mean, to a point, right? Because we can't change a whole system based on one video that we watch on a Friday. But we can maybe start to implement some of these things, right? Maybe not a complete change, because we are part of the institution that focuses on test scores. So maybe have fun with the students a little bit. Implement these a little bit at a time. The best way you know how. Again, you're the mathematicians. I'm not. And have fun, right? Change the marketing of math. Like as mathematicians, why did you fall in love with math? How did you get to enjoy math? And I have the links to some great videos out of all the ones I saw. These are the ones that I thought were some of the best ones. So there's the links there. Thank you guys so much for watching this. And yeah, that's it. Thanks.